Having received an inheritance of $20,000 from my late grandfather, I was walking home from the notary with one thought: to share the good news with my husband. But as I approached the door, I overheard him talking with his sister about me. What I heard made me go pale. Before starting the video, I would appreciate it if you take 3 seconds and subscribe to my channel. Emily sat in the notary's waiting room, nervously fidgeting with her passport. Her heart was pounding like a trapped bird's. There seemed to be no reason for fear. It was just money. $20,000. An amount that, to a nurse barely scraping by, felt astronomical. $20,000 left to her by Grandpa Henry. Grandpa Henry. She remembered his quiet voice, his wrinkled face, his kind eyes that always looked at her with a special warmth. He didn't spoil her with expensive gifts, but with attention and care. In her childhood, he spent hours reading her fairy tales, crafting wooden toys, teaching her to identify birds by their songs. As Emily grew older, he always asked about her life, listened to her complaints about her exhausting job, encouraged her, and told her she was strong and would overcome anything. And now, this unexpected inheritance felt like a greeting from a happier past. The notary, a stern woman in a formal suit, finally emerged from her office and gestured for Emily to come in. The paperwork didn't take long. Emily signed documents, stamped seals, and answered questions mechanically. Her mind swirled with memories of her grandfather, mixed with thoughts of how to use the money. When it was over, the notary handed her the documents. "Here," she said, "everything's ready. The money will be transferred to your account soon." Emily took the papers, thanked her, and stepped outside. The autumn air felt crisp and refreshing. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling knees. $20,000. It wasn't just money. It was an opportunity, a chance to catch a break from the endless grind, patch up holes in the family budget, maybe even buy something long desired. First, they needed a new washing machine. The old one barely worked, clattering loudly, and Emily always feared it would fall apart mid-cycle. Then there was the creaky, sagging couch that begged for replacement. And Emily dreamed of a short vacation, just a week away from the city, by the sea, soaking in the sun, forgetting sleepless hospital nights, grumpy patients, and household chores. She imagined telling James about it. He was struggling too, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. He'd be thrilled. Together, they'd decide how to best use the money. Emily smiled. It was a perfect excuse for a little celebration tonight. Buy a bottle of wine, cook something special. She could already picture James hugging her, thanking her. The walk home wasn't far. Emily strolled slowly, breathing in the fresh air and basking in the first rays of autumn sun. Plans, dreams, and hopes filled her mind. For a moment, it felt like life was turning around, that the worst was behind her. As she approached the door, she heard muffled voices coming from their apartment. At first, she didn't think much of it. Maybe James came home early and Sarah stopped by. But something in their tone made her pause, an odd inflection, as if they were hiding something. She stopped at the door and pressed her ear against it. The voices became clearer. It was James and Sarah. "So, what do you think? Can we get her to hand it over?" James was saying. "Of course we can," Sarah replied. "Where's she gonna go? You're her husband. Just say the money's for a shared goal, like starting a family business. She'll give it up." "I just don't get it," James continued. "Why'd her grandpa leave the money to her? Was there no one else? Like me, her husband? I'm supposed to manage the family budget." "You know she was his favorite," Sarah said. "He always loved her more, but the money, She's married, so it's not just hers. It's yours, too. Exactly, James jumped in. Ours, which means I'm entitled to it, too. Otherwise, she'll start acting like some saint, keeping it all for herself. Emily stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. The words cut like knives. Get her to hand it over, not just hers, yours too. I'm entitled to it. Was this real? Did James and Sarah see her as a naive fool they could manipulate? Had they been with her all along just for the money? Her breath caught in her throat. Her mind went blank. All her dreams, hopes, and plans crumbled like a house of cards. Joy and anticipation turned to pain and disillusionment. So she's a rich girl now, with a whole 20 grand, James said, his voice carrying a predatory edge Emily had never noticed, or refused to notice before. Think she'll crack quickly? Oh, Emily's too kind to resist for long, Sarah said with a light chuckle. You know how I've been dreaming of my nail salon. Rent, equipment, it adds up. She won't mind helping the family. Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. Sarah's business. How many times had she heard those talks about the salon, the dreams that never materialized due to a lack of funds? And now, here was their chance. They planned to exploit it like shameless parasites without even asking her opinion. Of course she won't mind, James said smugly. We'll explain it's for our future, for the family. Sarah giggled. You're something else, James. Just make sure it works. I'm tired of being broke, and this is too good an opportunity. Emily leaned against the wall, trying to stop her knees from shaking. She had always considered James and Sarah her family, people she could trust. She shared her joys and sorrows with them, supported them in tough times. And they were scheming behind her back, plotting to take her money. Taking a deep breath, Emily tried to gather her thoughts. She didn't know what to do next. Should she barge in and confront them? Pretend she heard nothing and see what happened? Or turn around and leave, letting them stew in their plans? Straightening up, Emily wiped the tears welling in her eyes and slammed the door loud enough for them to hear. James and Sarah were in the kitchen, sipping tea and chatting animatedly. Seeing Emily, they fell silent and flashed strained smiles. Hey, Emily, you're home already, James said, trying to sound casual. We're just having tea, talking about some stuff. Emily walked into the kitchen, hiding her emotions. She set her bag on the floor and sat at the table. Yeah, I'm home, she said calmly. What are you talking about? Oh, nothing special, Sarah said evasively, avoiding her gaze. James was just tossing around some ideas. James winked at Sarah and turned to Emily. We were thinking about how to best use your inheritance. It's basically money for our future, for the family. We need to plan carefully so it doesn't go to waste. Emily stayed silent, watching them. She saw their nervousness, their attempts to hide their lies. The hypocrisy made her sick. What ideas do you have? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Well, Sarah's got this great idea for a nail salon, James began, and Emily felt anger tightening inside her. She needs startup capital to get it going. We could help her out with part of your inheritance. It's an investment in our future, in the family. Emily looked at Sarah, who sat with her eyes down, pretending to be embarrassed. What do you say, Sarah? Do you really think I should give you part of my money? Sarah looked up with a guilty expression. Well, Emily, I know it's your money, and you can do whatever you want with it. But I've been dreaming of this salon forever. If you helped me, I'd be so grateful. Emily paused, weighing their words. She knew they were lying, trying to deceive her, but she wanted to give them a chance. She wanted to see how far they'd go. I'll think about it, she said finally. I need time to decide. James and Sarah exchanged glances, clearly not expecting that response. They thought she'd agree to hand over the money without a fight. Of course, Emily. Take your time, James said, masking his disappointment. We're not rushing you. Just make the right choice, for the family. Emily got up and went to her room. She needed to be alone to think and decide. She knew her life would never be the same. She could no longer trust James or Sarah. She'd have to take care of herself and her future. Locking herself in her room, Emily leaned against the door and closed her eyes. Fragments of their conversation, full of lies and hypocrisy, swirled in her mind. She felt betrayed and deceived, but she also felt a new strength, an inner confidence that she could handle whatever lay ahead. She wouldn't be naive or trusting anymore. Emily would learn to see through people, to protect herself and her interests. And she'd prove to James and Sarah that they were wrong to think they could deceive and use her. Opening her eyes, Emily looked at her reflection in the mirror. There were no more tears or confusion in her gaze. Her eyes burned with determination and resolve. She knew a tough road lay ahead, but she was ready to fight for her happiness and freedom. That evening, James acted as if nothing had happened. He greeted Emily with dinner, a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, and the usual questions about her hospital shift. Emily responded mechanically, a lump in her throat making it hard to speak freely. She watched him, his movements, the way he served himself food. Everything now seemed fake, rehearsed. Every word, every gesture. After dinner, as they settled in the living room in front of the TV, James casually brought up the money. So, Emily, how's it going with the inheritance? Emily froze. Here it was, the moment. She tried to keep her expression neutral. Everything's fine. I've got it all sorted. James perked up noticeably. Great. So maybe we should invest it somewhere. There are so many opportunities right now. Emily stayed silent, repulsed by his tone, the cloying interest she hadn't noticed or hadn't wanted to notice before. I haven't decided yet, she said, keeping her voice calm. I'm still thinking. James frowned. Thinking? What's there to think about? Money should be working, Emily. It's silly to let it just sit there. He scooted closer on the couch and took her hand. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine, not from affection, but from disgust. You know, Sarah's at a point where she's so close to starting her business. She could really use some financial help right now. Emily pulled her hand away. So you're suggesting I give part of my money to your sister for her business? James tried to smile, but irritation flickered in his eyes. Not give, invest. It's for the future. If she succeeds, we all win. And if she doesn't? Emily asked sharply. What then? James waved it off. Come on, don't be so negative. Sarah's got a good head on her shoulders. She's got it all planned out. She just needs startup capital, and you've got the chance to help her. In that moment, something snapped inside Emily. All her doubts, hopes, and attempts to justify his behavior crumbled. She looked at James and saw a stranger, greedy, calculating, ready to use her for his own gain. No, James, she said firmly. I'm not ready to share. This is my money, and I'll decide what to do with it. James jumped up from the couch. What do you mean, not ready? Are you getting greedy now? Have you forgotten who helped you when you were struggling? Forgotten everything I've done for you? Emily stood to face him. I haven't forgotten anything, James. I remember it all, and I'm grateful for your help, but that doesn't mean I owe you my money. You don't even need it, James shouted. You're a nurse, working for pennies. Sarah's got talent. She's got prospects. You should be thinking about the family, Emily. The family, Emily repeated bitterly. Is that what you call this? You and your sister plotting behind my back, dividing up my money thinking I'm some fool you can trick? James fell silent, his face red with anger. He clearly hadn't expected her to push back like this. You were eavesdropping, he hissed. Emily didn't answer. She just looked at him, her gaze filled with so much pain and disappointment that James couldn't hold it and turned away. Yes, I overheard, she said finally. And I heard enough to know who you really are. He opened his mouth to justify himself, but Emily stopped him with a gesture. No, James. No more lies. I know everything. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights twinkling in the distance, like tiny beacons of hope. But that hope was no longer tied to James. It was tied to herself, her future, her independence. You know, James, she said quietly without turning around. I always thought we were partners, building our life together. But now I see you're not a partner. You're a leech. James stood in the middle of the room, angry and flustered. He'd lost control of the situation, and it infuriated him. Emily turned to face him. I don't want to live in this lie anymore. She left the room, leaving him alone. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. The fear of the unknown was there, but it paled in comparison to the relief of shedding the weight of lies and betrayal. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, thinking about what lay ahead. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenges. She had a goal now, to rebuild her life on honest, fair terms, and she knew she could do it. The morning greeted her with cold autumn rain. Emily got out of bed and stood by the window. Raindrops slid down the glass like tears, but there was no room for tears in her heart anymore, only determination and hope. A thought of Grandpa Henry flashed through her mind. She remembered his kind eyes, his wise advice. He'd always believed in her, even when she doubted herself. Now, standing on the threshold of a new life, she felt his support. Thank you, Grandpa, she whispered. I won't let you down. Over the next week, Emily lived as if in a dream. She went to work, cared for patients, and performed her duties on autopilot, but her mind was elsewhere, in the apartment that no longer felt like home. James, sensing something was off, became more attentive, even caring. He brought her coffee in bed, asked about her day, checked on her well-being, but Emily wasn't fooled. Behind the facade of care, she saw only his fear of losing a source of wealth. She avoided arguments and scenes. She simply observed as the last of her illusions crumbled. Every kind word from James, every touch, filled her with disgust. She wanted to scream, run, disappear, but she held on. She knew she had to be strong, to plan carefully and do things right. At night, when James was asleep, Emily quietly got up and tended to her tasks. She packed her things, not everything, just the essentials, clothes, documents, photos. She transferred her money to a new account. She researched divorces, property rights, and how to protect her interests. She was scared of being alone, of starting over, of facing the unknown. But fear didn't paralyze her, it fueled her. She knew she had to break free from this web of lies and hypocrisy, to rebuild her life on her own terms. Her grandparents' apartment had stood empty since their passing. Emily hadn't dared visit it, overwhelmed by memories and pain. But now, in this crisis, the apartment felt like a safe haven, a quiet harbor where she could heal and find peace. One morning, after James left for work, Emily called a moving truck. She quickly packed the rest of her things, loaded them into the vehicle, and left. She didn't leave a note or call James. She simply vanished. The apartment greeted her with silence and the smell of dust. Everything was as she remembered. Old furniture, yellowed wallpaper, faded photos on the walls. This was where she'd spent her childhood, where she'd felt safe and loved. Emily opened the windows to let in fresh air. She looked around and realized there was work to be done. The place needed repairs, cleaning, new furniture, but she wasn't daunted. On the contrary, she felt a surge of energy and enthusiasm. She knew she could do it, could turn this neglected space into a cozy home, her own world. First, Emily hired a crew of workers. She ordered new flooring, wallpaper, and plumbing. She wanted the apartment to be bright, clean, and comfortable. She didn't skimp on materials, wanting everything done well and built to last. While the renovations were underway, Emily tackled the divorce paperwork. She found a good lawyer who helped her draft the petition and protect her rights. She didn't want anything from James, just freedom. The repairs took several weeks. During that time, Emily transformed the apartment, buying new furniture and hanging photos on the walls. She created an atmosphere of warmth and comfort, a space where she felt at peace. When the renovations were complete, Emily threw herself a small celebration. She bought a bottle of wine, lit candles, and sat at the table. Looking around, she smiled, feeling happy and free. Nearly all the inheritance went toward the apartment repairs and legal fees. Emily had no regrets. She knew the money was well spent. It had bought her independence, a home, and herself. Emily took on extra shifts at a private clinic. She needed money for bills and groceries. The work was demanding but fulfilling. She felt needed and useful, helping people, easing their suffering, and giving them hope. Over time, Emily adjusted to her new life. She learned to handle challenges, to find joy in small things, to value her freedom. James and Sarah faded from her life like a bad dream. One day, Sarah called. She apologized, saying she and James had made a mistake and deeply regretted their actions. Emily listened silently, then hung up. She had nothing to say to them. They'd betrayed her, deceived her, trampled her feelings. She wanted nothing to do with them. Emily became wary and cautious, no longer trusting people easily. Yet she never lost her kindness or compassion. She continued helping those in need, sharing her love and care. One evening, sipping tea in her kitchen, Emily reflected on her life. She realized that James and Sarah's betrayal had been a lesson. It taught her to value herself, to be strong and independent, to not trust blindly. She looked at a photo of Grandpa Henry on the table, smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa. You helped me find myself." Emily felt a wave of gratitude for her grandfather. She understood that his inheritance was more than material. It was spiritual. He left her not just money, but strength, wisdom, and belief in herself. Standing by the window, Emily realized it wasn't about revenge, but about peace and order. Her personal victory. The greatest triumph wasn't making her betrayers pay. It was building a life that would make them regret their actions. She wanted to be happy, successful, and independent, to prove they couldn't break her. And she knew she would.